In the name of the one holy and undivided Trinity. Amen. Advent, this season that leads up in hopeful expectation to Christmas, is a season of pregnancy, and not an easy one. In today's gospel reading, we hear the sort of world that Jesus will be born into, fraught with wars and threats of wars, distressed people everywhere, orphans and widows, people seeking violent solutions to their own pain. Nothing like today. Why would you bring a child into such a world? Why would anyone bring a child into a world that is destroying itself? That's exactly what Mary is about to do. We live in a culture that is vicious to mothers. Every mother is somehow mothering wrong. Either mothers are too rich and not taking care of their children and hiring help and sacrificing their relationship with their child for a career, or they're stupid for staying at home and doing the work of raising a child, or they're on welfare and shouldn't be reproducing at all. Lowlives who should know better. White people have a cherished myth about the extreme reproductive capacity, particularly of Latina and Black women. We've bought into that 80s entirely fictional vision of a welfare queen for decades now. In this country, we have a history of forcibly sterilizing poor women, especially women living with addiction and imprisoned women, mostly women of color. We have big public fights about which women should mother and when. Motherhood's a battleground in and of itself. Mary is one of those women. Poor, living under occupation, demonized, judged. One of those women having children when they don't know how to feed them. Darker skinned than her Roman rulers, and living outside propriety even within her own people. She doesn't have a steady place to lay her head. She's young. She's radically unfit. And she has a baby on the way. On December 9th, in 1531, a radically unfit young man had an encounter with Mary in central Mexico. Juan Diego, an indigenous man, was on his way to his baptismal preparation. And on his way, he needed to pass Tepeyac Hill, which is a site that had long been sacred to his people as belonging to the great mother goddess Tenantzin. He heard a voice from the top of the hill asking him to come up, and he obeyed. Upon the mountain, he encountered Mary, who spoke to him in his native language. She identified herself to him as the mother of compassion, of protection, and of love. and she asked him to return to the bishop of his area, relate his vision, and ask to build a shrine to her there. He did so, running down the mountain, overwhelmed with her presence. However, the bishop, of Spanish origin, did not take kindly to this dirty man insisting that Mary had come to him. He wasn't even baptized yet. And he tossed Juan Diego out. Juan Diego, dejected and bruised, returned to the hill to tell Mary that the bishop would not listen. She comforted him, told him to try again. So again, he returns to the bishop, and again the bishop throws him out. This happened, this whole cycle, one more time. And in the third conversation, thinking this would be the end of it, the bishop demanded a sign that it was truly Mary speaking to him. Juan Diego returned to the hill and relayed that request, which Mary promised to grant if he would return the following morning. As luck would have it, however, when Juan Diego returned, he was delayed by an uncle who had a sudden and severe illness. His whole family was preoccupied in taking care of this uncle. 2 days later, on December 12th, he was rushing past the hill to get to church to try to get a priest to say last rites. Mary came down the hill to stop him and ask him why he hadn't been back for the sign. He explained what had happened with his uncle. She looked at him and said, "Am I not here, your mother? Are you not under my shadow and my protection? Are you not in the crossing of my arms? Is there anything else you need? Don't fear for your uncle. He will not die. He is already well." Juan Diego trusted her and asked her for the sign for the bishop. She told him to again climb the hill, and there her sign would be. When he arrived, he saw mountains of blooming roses, despite it not being a place where any flowers had ever grown. He cut many of them and filled his cloak with them. When he came down the hill, Mary was pleased, and she carefully arranged the roses in his cloak before folding it up again and sending him on his way. Juan Diego ran to the bishop's house. He shouted and fought his way into the bishop's room. When he finally burst in, past the guards, the bishop was frustrated and ready to cast him out. But he unfolded his cloak. The room exploded with the fragrance of roses. The blossoms fell to the ground in a waterfall, and upon his cloak was imprinted the image of Our Lady, the one who had appeared to him. This is the image that I bear upon this chasuble today, Our Lady of Guadalupe. This appearance of an indigenous Mary allied with an indigenous man against the church is true to what we know of our Mary, the first Mary. There is something fierce and terrible in her alignment. and in her tenderness. It is also beautiful to remember that sometimes the people we venerate within the church were people who were sometimes working in subversion of the church. That the church too can be a power of this world. What does this mean for us today? It's not easy. She's not easy. She's an uneasy divinity for a messy era. She is a woman who offered her child against a world filled with wars and rumors of wars, who offered her pregnancy as a statement of faith that the world did not have to be this way. Her body was going to offer life and hope, even as she was shamed, even as she did not know how that tiny mouth would get fed. There would be a future instead of destruction. Her body was an absolute proof that no power of this world could argue with or defeat. Answering political viciousness and social terror and economic devastation with the silence of a pregnant body is not an expected route for God. One disposable, irresponsible woman's body, standing alone against a world at war with her and itself. And it remains there. She has placed her swollen self between us and the powers that be. An act of resistance so divine and so simple and so beautiful and so complex. Mary's body stands in this season as irrefutable evidence of hope, the testament to the world to come, the covenant in flesh.